Shalom, and welcome to V'ahavta Yisrael, a Hebrew phrase which means you shall love Israel. We hope you'll stay with us for the next 30 minutes as our teacher, Dr. Baruch, shares his expository teaching from the Bible. Dr. Baruch is the senior lecturer at the Zera Avraham Institute based in Israel. Although all courses are taught in Hebrew at the Institute, Dr. Baruch is pleased to share this weekly address in English. To find out more about our work in Israel, please visit us on the web at LoveIsrael.org. That's one word, LoveIsrael.org. Now, here's Baruch with today's lesson.
Not too long ago, I was watching an interview. This interview was from more than 30 years ago, and it was of a celebrity, someone who was famous in Hollywood. And what was interesting about this interview was that he was sharing with Johnny Carson that he had terminal cancer, and that the doctor said that he would probably live no more than 6 months, and they were accurate. And he said he was not sad. In fact, he had a profuse feeling of thankfulness. Now, not because he wanted to die and he was wanting to leave this planet and get away from individuals, but he said quite the contrary. He said that he was appreciative, that he knew that death was so near because it gave him a different perspective and that he could see things from a better point of view. And that caused him to express his innermost feelings, his love, his appreciation, his thanksgiving to his wife, and to his children, to his parents, and other individuals that have meant so much to him. And he said, I wanted to share this publicly to encourage other people to understand that even though you may not die in 6 months, but again, you might die tomorrow. Some people we don't know, therefore, take advantage of the opportunity. Share your feelings. Don't be shy. Don't be timid. Don't be embarrassed to express your love, your thanksgiving, what that other individual may have meant to you. And he said it's a wonderful thing to do that. And in essence, what we have seen in the book that we're studying, the Songs of Songs, is just that. These two main characters, the Shulamite, the woman, and her lover, who's the shepherd, they have shared back and forth their feelings, their love, their appreciation. And that's going to continue. Where we left off last week, we finished chapter 4. And we're going to see that these two are still in chapter 5, expressing their love, their feelings, their emotions, their thanksgiving for one another. Well, with that said, take out your Bible and look with me to Song of Songs, in Hebrew, Shir HaShirim, and chapter 5. The book of Song of Songs written by Solomon, and chapter 5. Notice what it says in verse 1. He is speaking. It's very important that we always discern who's speaking and to whom he's speaking or she's speaking, and what is the context, what is he conveying or she conveying to him or vice versa. Well, he's speaking and he says, I have come to my garden. Now, once more, this anticipates, it foreshadows that these two are going to come together. Here it's as though they have been reunited, but it has not happened. This simply enhances our understanding that in the future, at the end of this book, there will be indeed a coming together, a reunion between the Shulamite and her shepherd lover. So he says here, I have come to my garden. Be very much aware of the first person possessive pronoun, what we would say in English, my. He is showing this relationship. And what type of relationship? A covenantal relationship. That's what marriage is. I've shared that a lot, but it's so important that we realize that it's not a normal relationship. It is a covenantal relationship. And he says, I have come to my garden. Why garden? Well, garden is a place of provision. Now, we as a married couple, my wife and I, we provide for one another. And we should be doing that constantly. We should be sensitive, paying attention to what our spouse needs, what she needs and what I need. Based upon the circumstances, what's happening. It means that we pay attention. Now, realize a garden is a place of provision. We receive what we need from there, but it's also a place of care. So one has to care for his garden. There's a process, there's a methodology, and if we don't follow that, then there's not going to be much of a harvest. There's not going to be a lot of provision. So we need to know that, men, that if we're not investing, if we're not planting properly and taking care of what is planted, nurturing that, taking out the weeds, protecting, if we're not doing that, there's not going to be a good provision. Now, once more, we're not to seek what we can get from a relationship, but a relationship is mutually beneficial. And we have to acknowledge that. So he says here, I have come to my garden, and notice how he addresses her. He says, my sister bride. Now that's odd, my sister bride, but realize something. It identifies, and we've talked about this briefly before, and that is this. A marriage is a relationship founded in love. Love and acknowledgement of God's will and a response to what God's will is. So I love my wife because God has commanded me to do so. And likewise, we see that same thing in the scripture for women. So we love. But that love, first and foremost, notice what it says, my sister bride. Now, there's a big difference between the love that a brother has for a sister and a man has for his wife. But in order to have that unique, intimate love, that romantic love, it needs to be first founded upon an innocent, a holy, a love that we express within a family. If we don't have that love, we're not going to be able to develop the other. And the problem is that many times relationships are more governed by the second love, that intimate love between a man and a woman. And it's not founded upon the right basis, this innocent love, this godly love that we should have. Now, love changes, and we'll see this in a moment, but he says, I have come to my garden, my sister bride, and I have gathered my myrrh. Myrrh is a fragrance, it's pleasing. It speaks of that which is satisfying. So he says, I've gathered satisfaction from you. Also, myrrh was very expensive. And he's saying, I find value in her. I take her unto myself because she is of great significance, great value, and I find great pleasure. There is nothing wrong with sharing with your spouse how pleasurable she is to you, how much joy, fun, and good times you have because of her in your life, and vice versa. So he says, I've gathered up my myrrh with my spices. Now notice, my. What it's saying here is that he understands that she is the one for him. My myrrh, my spices, that is that which God has prepared for me. We need to acknowledge, so important, that my wife, she is God's choice for me, God's gift to me. And that's what he's doing in this verse. Notice that he enjoys his wife. He says, for I have eaten my force. Now we say garden is smaller. force is larger. But both seems to relate to a provision. And what we're talking about, what he's doing is acknowledging his love. And love changes. Remember, love is synonymous with wine in this book. We'll come to this again in a moment. And wine gets better over time. So we've seen a garden. A garden is a source of provision, but a forest is as well. You go into the forest too to receive things, the fruit of trees itself, lumber to build a home. It's also a place of provision, but it's larger. And we find that many times the things that a tree provides, a forest, is longer term. And then he says, I have gathered from my forest. I realize that some of your Bibles will say honeycomb for this word, but if you check it out, it's the word ya'ar. Ya'ar is forest. He says, I have gathered, or here it says, I have eaten from my forest with my honey. Over and over, my, everything's fitting for him. He's acknowledging she is right for me. There is no other. She's the one. So he's received that, and honey is sweet. It's a source of joy. It's something special. It's something additional that you add. And that's what she is. She is that topping of his life. The pinnacle. What you put on last, and sometimes that last is what makes the dish. And he goes on to say, I have drinking my wine with milk. Wine, once more, in this book, it's a reference to love. And this type of love, and receiving love from her, it says, with milk, my milk. Why my milk? Milk is synonymous with sustenance, nourishment, that which causes growth, that which is a wonderful provision. Milk sustains life. And what he's saying here is that she, in many ways, is the foundation of what he has become, what his life has amounted to. So he's acknowledging her and her wonderful influence in his life. And then what it says? Ichlu Re'im. Re'im would be friends. And what he's saying here is partake, eat, my friends, although it's just friends, and drink and become drunk. Drunk with what? Love. Now, why does he use that term? The Bible is very specific. To be drunk has to do with alcohol influencing the person. Alcohol causing a different perspective. When you're drunk, you see things differently, you behave differently. And what he's saying is this love, and it's in the plural, it's an abundant, it's a full love. It is an influence in his life. Because of her, he sees things differently. He's experiencing things. His life is greatly influenced by her. That's what he's saying. Well, let's move on to verse 2. Now it's going to be from her perspective. And notice what it says, verse 2, I am sleeping. Now, this next section in chapter 5, from verse 2 to the end of verse 8, is similar to what we saw in chapter 3. Remember when the Shulamite, when she went out into the streets, leaving the palace, seeking her beloved one, her shepherd lover, her real spouse. Well, she met the workers, the guards of the city. And again, she's going to do that in a moment. But notice how it's set up. Verse 2, I am sleeping, but my heart is awake. Heart, she's thinking. So she's sleeping, it's at the night, but her mind is still thinking about who? About the voice of my beloved. And she hears that voice. This is probably a dream. Now remember, this is like a musical, a song, a play. And she's having a flashback, a dream. And she hears the voice of her beloved knocking. And he says, open for me, my sister. He wants to come in. There's this foreshadowing of them coming together. And it's going to happen, but not yet. It's constantly being interrupted. She's so close to being reunited with him, and then she's not. But here she hears the voice of her beloved knocking. He says, "Open for me, my sister, my spouse, my dove, my innocent one." Now, notice that, my innocent one. What's the implication? Once again, just like in chapter 3, she's in the palace. She has been taken by another man, but in his eyes, she's still innocent. None of that has changed his love, commitment, and how he sees her. Now, in speaking about him, his head, he says, "My head is filled with dew." Now, it's the nighttime. We know in the nighttime, there's a dew. It's heaviest. It remains in the morning before the sun causes it to dry up. So he's out in the night, and he says, "My head is full of dew, and the locks," meaning his hair, "drips of the night." So he is of the night, separated. There is something that is between them. But in this dream, it's being done away with, apparently, seemingly for a moment. Notice what he says. "I have removed my tunic." So he's implying to come into her abode, where she's staying, her chamber. He says, "I have removed my tunic. How can I dress it again? I have washed my feet. How can I make them dirty?" So he's saying here, don't worry. I'm here to stay. I'm not going to put back on my garment. I'm not going to get my feet dirty. I've washed them. I'm here. I've removed my garment. So it anticipates this wonderful reunion. But what happens? Look at verse 4. "My beloved," now she is speaking about him. She says, "My beloved, his hand he sent forth from the door." So it could be here that he's put forth his hand to come in. And what happens? Keep reading. She says, "And my innermost being," her intestines. Now, it's a word here that speaks about that inner condition, the feeling. We might say my stomach, my intestines, they hummed. So they were excited concerning him. Verse 5. "And I stood up, I rose up to open for my beloved." So she's in the room. Remember, she's asleep, but she hears his voice. He's saying he's here. He's coming. He's not leaving. "Rise up, open for me." And that's what she's doing. "I have risen to open for my beloved, and my hand, it drips with myrrh." Now, myrrh here is synonymous with love, this feeling, this pleasing scent, this occurrence that is pleasing, joyful, satisfying. And she says, "My hand is dripping with this oil, so to speak, this perfume." Furthermore, she says, "And my fingers are also of liquid myrrh." It passes over upon the locks of the doors. Now, it's a word for button, the kind of unfastening the door. She's trying to do that, but there's frustration. She's excited. She's trying to unlock everything, but her hands are oily. They're dripping from this oil, this myrrh, this incense that she has. And what happens? She says in verse 6, "I open for my beloved, and my beloved" does what? He withdraws. Now here again, it's not a historical happening. She is having a dream. And dreams oftentimes can be very frustrating. So she's having this dream, and it says here, he moves and passes. And when that happens, she says, "My soul goes out from me with his word." So apparently he said something, as he was withdrawn. Can you remember watching this television show here again years ago? And we see, and this is a common occurrence, is that people are having some flashback, some dream, and they're coming near their beloved, similar to this, and what happens? He moves away. He's taken away. And that's what's happening. And he says something, and she says, my soul goes out from me, for I have sought him, but have not found him. And I have called to him, but there is no answer. He does not answer me. Verse 7. Now, this is the part that's so similar to what we saw in chapter 3. It says in verse 7, the keepers, meaning the keepers of the city, they found me, the ones who go about in the city. And what did they do? Well, something very different. Here, they struck her and they wounded her. It says, they struck me and wounded me, and they lifted up my veil from upon me. This is an image of shame. Now, this is what's happening. The guardman, the watchman of the city, represents the city. It represents the perspective of others. And they're saying here, you're no good. What you're doing, you need to be punished for. And they shame her by lifting up her veil from upon her. So they are scolding her, punishing her, shaming her. Why? Because she's still seeking this shepherd instead of being satisfied with Solomon. And what it simply points out is that her love for him, the shepherd, is not going away. It is a strong love. It is a pure love. It is a holy love. It is a covenantal love that is only possible to be expressed through the covenant of marriage. Look, if you would, to verse 7 at the end. Who's doing this? The keepers of the walls. Now, it's a different group. What's wall? It's to emphasize the phrase a wall of separation. Now, there's two different words in Hebrew for wall. There's a word kir, which is like a wall in a house. But there's also the word choma. Choma is a wall, like a city wall, which is much bigger, much stronger, much thicker. And this is walls, homot in the plural. So it's to emphasize this separation between him and her and him, and that society is doing that. And there's wisdom for us, because that's exactly what society wants to do. If we are influenced by society, the movies we watch, the books, the perspective, the satanic propaganda that fills this world, it attacks, it beats against this marriage. It's discouraging. But what does she say? Look at verse 8. I charge you, daughters of Jerusalem, if you are to find my beloved, what should you say to him? Tell him that I'm lovesick. Here again, she misses him so much. It's speaking about how we can be homesick when we're away. Well, this is lovesick because of this separation, this division, these walls of separation that have come between him and her. Look now to verse 9. Now she is going to praise her beloved. She says, what actually people are asking her, what is your beloved from other beloved? Now it could mean him personally or the love that he has. What is his unique? Why is his love so unique? Or why is he himself so unique from other ones? And notice how she's spoken to. She's spoken of the fairest among women. You know, again, how is your beloved better than other beloved ones? Why is he unique? That thus you have charged us, that you have admonished us in the way that you did, saying how much you miss him, that you have a sickness because you missed that love. Now she's going to answer that. Look at verse 10. She says, my beloved, it's the word tzach. It speaks about something that is clear, no additives. It's pure. Some Bibles will translate this word as white, but it's speaking about purity. And he is ruddy. Now, this is the same word that's used to describe King David as being a gingy, a redhead. But it's a word here that's simply saying he's like David. And the name David is the same word for beloved or love in this book. And he, it says here, is the head of 10,000, the chief of 10,000. It's a word here for being lifted up like a flag is lifted up. He is above 10,000 others. He's special, he's unique. His head, this is his crown, so to speak. His head is of a unique gold, and the locks of his hair, they are curly and they are black as a raven. So he's got this black hair. He's wavy hair, and he's unique. He's special. He's precious, just like she was told by him that she was precious. Verse 12. His eyes are like the doves by the streams of water that are like washed in milk and like sitting in their place. Now, this is an imagery of, you have like fine gems, and you put them into, you inlay them into a place. That's what it's saying here about his beautiful eyes. Read on in verse 13. His cheeks, speaking about his face, his cheeks are like a bed of spices and towers of ointments. Now, ointments for the emphasis of being smooth. So she says towers of ointments, meaning how smooth is his lips. And he is like the lily that drips myrrh, liquid myrrh. So once again, she is his myrrh, and he is her myrrh. Something precious, something pleasing, a pleasing fragrance. So once again, they affirm each other in the most special ways, in the terms and the language that perhaps only they can understand. Verse 14. His hands are like golden wheels, which are filled with beryl. And this is a gemstone. And it says his stomach is like carved ivory inlaid with sapphire, that is sapphires. So again, precious. She's describing him from the top of his head downward to his feet. Look at verse 15. His ankles, and this could just mean the lower part below the knees. His ankles are like pillars of marble, inlaid with or laid upon the planks of gold. His appearance is like Lebanon with the choice cedars. Now here we're talking about something that is holy, labors, and this word, or cedars, and the word here, adnei paz, this word is the same word for the planks of the tabernacle. So she's describing him in a very, very majestic ways, that his life is a life of praise and adoration to God. Don't miss out on the symbolic terms that she uses here. Let's move on to verse 16, our last verse. Chiko. Now, this can be gums, but it's probably a reference to mouth. Now, we see something. She's gone from his head down to his feet, but now his mouth. And it's just to emphasize how important and how pleasing words can be. So his mouth is sweet. And it says basically all of him is desirable. For this is my beloved, this is my spouse, O daughters of Jerusalem. So we go through here a very important chapter that both praise one another, but again, what's highlighted in the midst of this is this separation, this division. But once more, we're going to have a happy ending. They're going to be reunited, and we're going to see in chapters 6, 7, and 8 how this is brought about and what we, as the listeners to this song of songs, meaning the chief song, what we're supposed to understand from it. Not simply just to have a head knowledge, but how we're supposed to apply it to our lives. Well, I'll close with that. Until next week, shalom from Israel.
Well, we hope you will benefit from today's message and share it with others. Please plan to join us each week at this time and on this channel for our broadcast of LoveIsrael.org. Again, to find out more about us, please visit our website, LoveIsrael.org. There you will find articles and numerous other lectures by Baruch. These teachings are in video form. You may download them or watch them in streaming video. Until next week, may the Lord bless you in our Messiah Yeshua, that is, Jesus, as you walk with Him. Shalom from Israel.